You may recall reporting over the past year that had to do with the US Department of Transportation issuing fines to foreign carriers like Emirates, Etihad and Ethiopian Airlines. These foreign airlines and their offending aircraft were nowhere near the United States, prompting a handful of viewers to comment about government overreach. But these cases had logical explanations for the infractions and fines and were related to codeshare agreements with partner US carriers. And it's these examples that demonstrate just some of the US Department of Transportation's requirements when it comes to codeshare agreements, something we'll look at in depth in this video. We'll start by explaining codeshare agreements, but if it's something you already know, feel free to skip this part and get to the part about US Department of Transportation enforcement roughly halfway through the video. And so, what is a codeshare? Well, this is a type of agreement where two or more airlines sell tickets on the same flight using their own flight numbers. The flight will then be operated by one of the airlines, known as the operating carrier. Codeshare agreements are typically found within airline alliances, but carriers can also have agreements with other airlines outside of those alliances. By making such commercial agreements, airlines can expand their virtual route networks, open up new sales opportunities, and ultimately bring in more revenue. Through codeshares, passengers can collect loyalty points and enjoy elite status benefits associated with their home airline, even if they aren't actually flying with that specific carrier. Of the major US carriers, United Airlines has the most codeshares, with more than 30 active agreements currently in place. Meanwhile, American Airlines has 29 agreements and Delta Airlines has 22 currently in place at the time of making this video. The benefits of codeshares are obvious, but such partnerships come with responsibilities and obligations as well. The US Department of Transportation has strict regulations for codeshares that must be met before the agreement can be finalized and must be kept in place throughout the lifespan of the deal. Before any agreement can be implemented and approved by the US Department of Transportation, the US carrier must conduct a safety audit of the international carrier and submit the results for review by the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA. In 2019, the Department of Transportation introduced a law that required airlines to ensure passengers were made aware at the booking stage which carrier will operate their flight in the event of a codeshare agreement. The law required this information to be clearly visible on the booking screen and on the same screen as the itinerary. The purpose of this regulation was to help reduce confusion among passengers who did not know which airline they would be flying on. Prior to the introduction of this rule, code-sharing operations on some booking websites were only revealed through a hyperlink or by hovering the cursor over a certain section of the site. At the time of its launch, the then US Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood said, "When passengers buy an airline ticket, they have the right to know which airline will be operating their flight. For years, we've required airlines to inform consumers about code-sharing arrangements, and we'll be monitoring the industry closely to make sure they comply with the provisions of the new legislation." Even after the codeshare agreement has been implemented, USDOT mandated regulations must be followed throughout the life of the agreement. Airlines that do not meet the necessary requirements set by the US Department of Transportation are at risk of hefty fines. The examples are plentiful, even in the past year. In June 2024, the department fined Emirates $1.8 million for operating flights carrying JetBlue Airways designator code in regions in which an FAA flight prohibition was in effect for US operators. The fine was applied to flights that operated between December 2021 and August 2022 that flew over Iraq on their way to the United States. For safety reasons, the FAA doesn't allow US airlines to fly over Iraq under 32,000 feet. The unfortunate circumstances of these violations was that, according to the Associated Press, Emirates had planned the flights to comply with such rules, but the pilots only lowered altitude at the request of air traffic control. This would appear to have been an unfortunate no-win situation for the airline. This appeared to be Emirates' second set of violations. In 2020, the carrier was fined $400,000 for a similar violation. It was stated that for 19 days in July 2019, Emirates operated flights carrying the JetBlue code over parts of Iranian airspace, despite the FAA issuing a Notice to Air Missions, or NOTAM, prohibiting US operators from flying in that region. More recently, in September 2024, Air Canada was fined $250,000 for operating flights carrying United Airlines designator code in regions in which an FAA flight prohibition was in effect for US operators. Offending flights were between the United Arab Emirates and Canada. And then, most recently, in December 2024, the DOT announced that it had fined Ethiopian Airlines $425,000 and Etihad Airways $400,000. In a separate announcement at the same time, Lufthansa was hit with a $220,000 fine, while Swiss was fined $200,000. Ethiopian, Lufthansa and Swiss were operating flights carrying United Airlines designator code, while Etihad carried JetBlue's code. Again, the fines were due to all of these airlines flying in regions where an FAA flight prohibition was in effect for US operators. Where exactly were these restricted areas? Well, the most specific information is that Ethiopian Airlines, with its United Codeshare, was said to have operated a significant number of flights between Ethiopia and Djibouti in airspace prohibited by the FAA. As for Etihad, it was only stated that the airline's infractions occurred on flights between the United Arab Emirates and the United States. No more specifics were given for Lufthansa or Swiss. The airlines were ordered to cease and desist from future similar violations. So, are these fines examples of overreach by the US government? Well, you'll probably find people taking both sides of the debate, with some alleging that it's all a big cash grab opportunity for the US. At least those are the types of comments we see on videos discussing the fines. But ultimately, despite the pricey penalties, these foreign airlines should know in advance what rules they need to comply with in order to fly with the code of a partner US airline and reap those associated benefits. While it's not stated anywhere specifically, one would have to infer that such regulations and accompanying enforcement is for the safety of American carriers and their passengers, something that is extended to foreign airlines sharing codes of those US airlines. But what do you think of all of this? Have you benefited from code shares during your travels? And is the US Department of Transportation's oversight and enforcement appropriate? Let us know what you think by leaving a comment. Simple Flying publishes over 150 articles every week. If you're looking for the latest aviation news and insights, visit simpleflying.com.